True leadership has never been about the size of your title, the office you sit in, or the number of people who salute when you walk into a room. True leadership begins with who you are, not what you have. It is strength wrapped in kindness and boldness wrapped in humility. It's the ability to stand tall when storms rage, yet bow low enough to serve the very people who stand beside you. Strength alone can make people fear you, but strength with kindness makes people trust you. Boldness alone can push people away, but boldness with humility brings people closer. Leadership is not about forcing others to follow. It's about inspiring them to want to follow. And that inspiration doesn't come from barking orders. It comes from showing a living example. Steady, kind, bold, and humble. Think of the greatest leaders in history. Their strength wasn't in their fists. It was in their character. Their boldness wasn't in loud speeches. It was in quiet convictions. And their humility wasn't weakness. It was the wisdom to know that leadership is never about self-glory, but about lifting others higher. You see, anyone can demand respect, but only a true leader earns it. Anyone can raise their voice, but only a true leader raises people's hearts. Anyone can talk about vision, but only a true leader helps others see their own potential inside that vision. When you lead with strength and kindness, people feel safe. When you lead with boldness and humility, people feel valued. And when people feel both safe and valued, they don't just work with you. They work for a cause greater than themselves. That's where real progress begins. So let's remember, leadership is not power over people. It's power with people. It's not about proving how strong you are, but about helping others discover how strong they can be. It's not about being the loudest voice in the room, but about being the voice that people trust when everything else gets quiet. True leadership is a balance. Be strong, but never harsh. Be kind, but never weak. Be bold, but never arrogant. Be humble, but never timid. That balance is what sets apart those who simply hold positions from those who truly change lives. Strength alone creates fear, but strength with kindness creates trust. When a person carries only raw power, they may win obedience, but they rarely win hearts. People might follow out of duty, or worse, out of fear of what will happen if they refuse. That kind of leadership is brittle because fear never lasts. The moment someone finds a way out, they will leave. The moment someone finds someone stronger, they will switch sides. But when strength is mixed with kindness, something completely different happens. Trust begins to grow, and trust is the one thing that can bind people together through storms, through challenges, through times when everything else seems uncertain. Trust does not break when pressure comes. Trust does not vanish when difficulties arise, because trust is built on the deep assurance that the one who leads is not only strong enough to protect, but kind enough to care. Think about the people you've respected most in life. They were not the loudest, nor were they the harshest. They were those who carried quiet strength, a strength you could lean on, a strength you knew would not be used to crush you. Their strength wasn't for themselves, it was for you, for others, for the team, for the cause. And the moment that strength was seasoned with kindness, you didn't just respect them, you trusted them. You believed their intentions, you believed their word, you believed that their decisions, even if difficult, were not made to harm, but to guide. That is why true leadership cannot survive without kindness. There's a difference between authority and influence. Authority comes from a position, from a badge, from a title, from something written on paper. Influence comes from character, from the way you treat people, from the way you carry yourself when no one is watching. A leader who rules by authority alone must always remind others of their power. But a leader who leads with influence never needs to remind anyone, because people simply want to follow. That influence is born when strength is balanced with kindness, because strength without kindness feels like oppression, but kindness without strength feels like weakness. Only when the two come together does influence take root. Imagine a parent raising a child. If the parent only shows strength, the child may obey but never feel safe. If the parent only shows kindness, the child may feel loved but never disciplined. But when strength and kindness work hand in hand, the child grows with both security and guidance. That same principle applies to leadership at every level. Teams flourish not under leaders who dominate, but under leaders who protect and guide. Businesses grow not under managers who only demand results, but under those who show they care for people while standing firm on standards. Even nations remain strong when leaders use their strength to protect and their kindness to serve. There's a simple truth: people never forget how you made them feel. They may forget your speeches, they may forget your orders, but they will never forget the way your strength made them feel safe and the way your kindness made them feel valued. Fear produces distance. Trust produces loyalty. Fear makes people hide mistakes. Trust makes people admit them and fix them. Fear keeps people silent. Trust makes people speak up with ideas. Fear may win compliance, but trust wins commitment. That is the power of strength with kindness. Now picture a workplace where the leader walks in every day with an iron fist. People do their jobs, but they dread coming in. They clock in for the paycheck, not for the purpose. They give the bare minimum, because why give your heart to someone who doesn't care? Then picture another workplace where the leader is strong enough to set direction, make tough calls, and demand high standards, but also kind enough to ask, "How are you?" Kind enough to listen when someone is struggling. Kind enough to celebrate when someone succeeds. In that second workplace, people don't just come for a paycheck. They come for a mission. They don't just work with their hands. They work with their hearts. That difference is the direct result of leading with strength and kindness. Strength with kindness also builds resilience in others. When people know that the one they follow is both capable of carrying weight and willing to care for those carrying it with him, they find courage. They are willing to take risks, to step outside their comfort zones, to push beyond what they thought was possible. They do it not because they are forced, but because they trust the leader won't let them fall. In moments of failure, kindness lifts them up, while strength gives them direction to try again. That combination doesn't just produce results, it produces growth. History shows us countless leaders who led by fear, and their empires crumbled as quickly as they rose. Why? Because fear may gather people for a while, but it cannot hold them forever. Fear is a chain, and people spend their lives looking for the key to escape it. But trust is a bond, and people spend their lives building it stronger. Leaders who understood this used their strength to shield, their authority to serve, and their boldness to uplift. They were remembered not just for their victories, but for the way they treated those who walked with them. That memory of kindness, anchored in strength, is what keeps their names alive long after they are gone. Even in everyday life, you see this principle play out. Think of a teacher in a classroom. If the teacher relies only on authority, students may sit in silence, but learning doesn't truly happen. If the teacher relies only on kindness, students may feel comfortable, but discipline may slip. But when that teacher balances strength and kindness, the classroom becomes a place where students feel both guided and cared for. They not only learn, they thrive. Leadership is no different. It is about creating an environment where people can do their best because they trust the one guiding them. Strength with kindness is also contagious. When people are led with this balance, they begin to lead others the same way. A strong yet kind leader creates a culture where kindness is not weakness but wisdom, where strength is not control but support. That culture spreads. Soon, people treat each other with the same balance they've experienced from their leader. Workplaces, families, communities all rise when kindness and strength are woven together. The greatest misunderstanding is thinking that kindness makes you soft. On the contrary, it takes greater strength to remain kind when you have power. Anyone can bark orders. Anyone can use fear. But it takes discipline, self-control, and vision to choose kindness in moments when you could easily crush someone. That choice is what separates ordinary leaders from great ones. Strength gives you the ability to act. Kindness gives you the wisdom to act rightly. Together, they build trust that lasts beyond a single moment, beyond a single project, beyond even a single lifetime. Boldness alone pushes people away, but boldness with humility draws them closer. Boldness by itself can look like arrogance. It can sound like pride. It can feel like a force that demands attention but never earns respect. People may listen for a moment. They may even step aside to let you pass, but in their hearts they keep their distance because boldness without humility feels unsafe. It feels like a storm that might sweep them away, a fire that might burn them if they get too close. Humility, however, changes the entire texture of boldness. When humility walks hand in hand with boldness, the storm becomes a guiding wind, the fire becomes a warm light, and people no longer step aside, they step closer. They lean in because they see that the boldness is not self-serving, it is purpose-driven. They sense that it is not about showing off, but about showing the way. There are many who confuse boldness with noise. They think being bold means talking louder, pushing harder, demanding attention at every turn. But true boldness is not volume, it is conviction. It is the courage to stand up when silence is easier. It is the willingness to go against the current when drifting along would cost nothing. And yet, without humility, even conviction can harden into pride. A bold person without humility may believe they are always right, may never listen, may see others as stepping stones rather than companions. That kind of boldness isolates. But when humility enters, boldness changes shape. It still stands tall, but it bows its head enough to listen. It still speaks firmly, but it speaks with respect. It still takes the lead, but it does not despise those who follow. Humility is not about shrinking back or pretending to be less than you are. Humility is knowing your worth without needing to shout about it. It is being confident without being conceited. It is recognizing that while you may have vision, wisdom, or courage, you are not above others, you are among them. A bold leader without humility climbs a mountain alone to wave a flag of victory, but a bold leader with humility climbs the same mountain and brings others along so they too can see the view. That is the difference between boldness that pushes people away and boldness that draws them in. Think of the people who inspire us most. They were not timid. They were not afraid to take risks. They did not hide in the shadows. They were bold. They stepped out when others hesitated. They spoke when others remained silent. They led when others waited for permission. But what made their boldness magnetic rather than repelling was humility. They never used their courage to make others feel small. They used their courage to make others feel possible. They did not stand on a stage to show how bright their light was. They stood there to show others that their own light could shine too. Boldness without humility says, look at me. Boldness with humility says, look at what we can do. Boldness without humility takes credit. Boldness with humility shares credit. Boldness without humility demands recognition. Boldness with humility gives recognition. And people can feel the difference. They can feel whether boldness is for self-glory or for collective growth. When they sense humility behind the courage, they are drawn to it because it feels safe, it feels sincere, it feels real. Imagine a workplace where a leader is bold without humility. They make big declarations, they set daring goals, they speak with passion, but they never listen. They never admit when they are wrong. They never give credit to the team. Soon people begin to withdraw. They may still follow orders, but they do not give their hearts. They start holding back ideas because why share with someone who will never listen? They start doing the minimum because why give extra to someone who will only claim the spotlight? Now imagine the same workplace under a leader who is bold with humility. The goals are still daring, the vision is still inspiring, but the leader listens. The leader admits when a mistake is made. The leader shines the light on others. In that environment, people lean in. They want to contribute. They want to push forward. They want to see the vision succeed because they feel part of it. That is the magnetic pull of boldness with humility. In relationships, the same principle applies. A person who is bold without humility in a family or friendship might always push their own opinions, might dominate every decision, might insist on their own way. That creates distance. But when someone brings humility to their boldness, they still speak their mind, they still stand firm on values, but they also listen, they consider, they respect. The relationship grows stronger because boldness with humility doesn't silence others, it makes space for them. One of the great challenges in leadership, in family, in business, even in daily life, is learning how to balance courage with gentleness, conviction with openness, direction with collaboration. That balance is what humility gives to boldness. Boldness pushes you forward, humility keeps you grounded. Boldness gives you vision, humility gives you perspective. Boldness says, let's go. Humility says, let's go together. When those two meet, leadership takes on a power that is unstoppable because it is no longer about one person. It is about all who choose to follow. Even in history, the leaders remembered for their greatness were not those who simply stood boldly in the spotlight. They were those who, even in their boldness, carried humility that made people believe in them. They were willing to stand firm, but also willing to bend an ear. They were confident, but never too proud to admit they did not have every answer. That humility did not make their boldness weaker. It made it stronger because people knew their courage was not reckless. It was thoughtful, grounded, balanced. When boldness is tempered with humility, it becomes approachable. People no longer feel threatened by it. They feel empowered by it. They no longer say, that's their path. They say, that could be our path. They no longer stand at a distance. They come closer because they sense that the boldness is not about control. It is about calling out the best in others. And once people feel that, they don't just follow for a season. They commit for the long journey. Leadership is not power over people. It's power with people. Too often, leadership has been mistaken for domination, for authority, for the ability to command and control. The image of leadership in many minds is someone standing above others, issuing orders, demanding compliance, and measuring success by how many follow without question. But that is not true leadership. That is dictatorship. Leadership at its core is not about standing above people. It is about standing among them. It is not about how loudly you can speak. It is about how deeply you can connect. Real power is not measured by how many people obey out of fear, but by how many people choose to walk with you out of trust. Power over people creates walls. Power with people builds bridges. Power over people divides the leader from the led, while power with people unites them in a shared mission. When someone rules over others, they stand isolated, separated, and often resented. But when a leader walks with people, shoulder to shoulder, they create unity that no obstacle can easily break. People can feel the difference. When leadership is power over, they feel used. When leadership is power with, they feel valued. When they feel valued, they give more than their effort. They give their hearts, their ideas, their loyalty. Think about a team on a long journey. A leader who exerts power over people walks ahead, expecting everyone else to keep up, scolding those who fall behind, and taking all the credit for reaching the destination. That team grows tired, unmotivated, and resentful. But a leader who believes in power with people walks beside them, encouraging, guiding, sometimes even slowing down to lift those who stumble. They don't just arrive at the destination alone, they arrive with the team intact, stronger, and more united. That kind of journey leaves people not only achieving something together, but also growing together. True leadership recognizes that every person has value, every voice matters, and every contribution has weight. Power with people means creating space for others to rise, not keeping them down. It means asking for input, listening to perspectives, and realizing that leadership is not about having all the answers, but about drawing out the collective wisdom of the group. A leader who rules over people may appear to know everything, but their perspective is limited. A leader who walks with people multiplies insight because together they see more, understand more, and accomplish more. When leaders use power over people, they create dependency. People wait for instructions, afraid to take initiative. They stop thinking for themselves because thinking becomes dangerous. But when leaders use power with people, they create empowerment. People feel free to act, to think, to innovate, because they know their leader is not there to punish them for mistakes, but to help them learn from them. In that kind of environment, creativity thrives, responsibility grows, and progress accelerates. Even in families, this principle is clear. Parents who only exert power over their children may gain obedience in the moment, but often lose connection in the long run. Children may listen out of fear, but they may also hide their struggles, avoid sharing their thoughts, and distance themselves as they grow older. But parents who lead with power with their children, by guiding, listening, supporting, and teaching, raise children who feel understood and safe. Those children grow not only disciplined, but confident because they know they are walking with someone who respects their journey. In the workplace, a manager who uses power over employees might rely on threats, rigid control, and constant reminders of authority. Employees may work to avoid punishment, but they will not pour their energy into the mission. They will do the minimum required and look for the first chance to leave. But a manager who uses power with employees invites collaboration, seeks feedback, and builds a sense of belonging. In that environment, employees bring ideas to the table, take ownership of their roles, and feel proud to be part of the mission. That difference is why some companies struggle with high turnover while others thrive with loyalty and innovation. Power with people is also what sustains leaders through hard times. When challenges arise, leaders who ruled over people find themselves standing alone because fear-driven loyalty vanishes quickly when the storm comes. But leaders who walk with people find themselves surrounded, supported, and carried by those who trust them. That trust cannot be bought or forced. It is built through daily choices of respect, empathy, and shared purpose. History has shown that those who ruled with power over people often built empires that crumbled as soon as they fell, because fear never outlives the one who creates it. But those who led with power with people built legacies that lasted generations because trust and empowerment live on in those they led. People will rarely remember every order you gave, but they will never forget whether they felt used or valued under your leadership. There is also a deeper truth. Power with people doesn't diminish authority, it enhances it. Some believe that to share power is to lose control, but the opposite is true. A leader who hoards power may appear strong, but they carry the weight alone, and eventually it breaks them. A leader who shares power multiplies strength, because every person becomes a carrier of the mission. They create a network of shared responsibility, and that collective force is far stronger than any individual authority. Leadership that is power with people also builds character in the leader themselves. It teaches patience because walking with people requires time. It teaches humility because listening to others means admitting you don't know everything. It teaches compassion because carrying others' struggles alongside your own reveals the weight of humanity. That kind of leadership transforms not only the people being led, but the leader themselves, shaping them into someone whose impact goes beyond results into legacy. Even small acts can reflect this principle. A leader who asks their team, "What do you think?" A leader who celebrates not just the big wins, but the small contributions. A leader who stays late to help when others are struggling, who makes time to listen, who treats the newest member with the same respect as the most experienced one. Those actions send a clear message. It's not about me standing above you. It's about us walking together. That message builds trust that no command could ever enforce. When power is shared, people grow. When people grow, missions thrive. When missions thrive, communities rise. And it all begins with one shift in mindset. Leadership is not about exercising power over people. It is about exercising power with them. That shift changes everything because it transforms leadership from a position into a partnership, from a demand into a calling, from a weight into a shared journey. True leaders don't just raise their voices, they raise people's hearts. Anyone can speak loudly, anyone can demand attention, anyone can shout instructions across a room, but that does not mean they are leading. Leadership is not about the noise of your words, it is about the depth of your influence. A voice can command, but a heart can inspire. When a leader focuses only on raising their voice, people may hear them, but they do not feel them. When a leader focuses on raising hearts, people not only hear but believe, they not only listen but act with passion, they not only follow but carry the mission within them. The difference lies in whether your leadership reaches the ears or whether it reaches the soul. People remember how leaders made them feel more than they remember what leaders said. A harsh command may achieve quick compliance, but it rarely sparks loyalty. A loud demand may produce action, but it does not produce commitment. True leaders understand that their role is not just to give direction, but to awaken something inside others that makes them want to give their best. They know that the human heart responds more deeply to encouragement, to belief, to trust than it ever does to noise or threats. Words shouted from a position of power may cause movement, but words spoken from the heart with conviction and care, because transformation, there is a great difference between pushing people forward and lifting them upward. Raising your voice often pushes, but raising hearts lifts. When someone is pushed, they may stumble, they may move reluctantly, they may even resist. But when someone is lifted, they rise with strength they didn't know they had. A true leader does not just say, "Do this," they say, "I believe you can do this." They don't just issue tasks, they ignite belief. They don't just tell people where to go, they give them reasons why it matters. That belief creates momentum far stronger than any command ever could. Think about the teachers, mentors, or guides you've had in life. The ones who left the deepest impression were not those who shouted the loudest, but those who made you feel capable, those who looked at you and said, "You can do more, you can become more." Their words didn't just go into your ears, they went into your heart. They lit a fire that kept burning long after the lesson was over. That is the mark of a true leader. Someone who raises hearts in such a way that the impact lasts beyond the moment, beyond the task, sometimes even beyond their lifetime. Raising voices is easy. It requires no emotional investment. But raising hearts requires patience, empathy, and genuine care. It requires seeing people not just as workers or followers, but as individuals with dreams, struggles, and potential. A leader who raises hearts takes time to listen, takes time to understand, and then speaks in a way that connects with the deeper needs of people. This is why people will go the extra mile for a leader who inspires them. They are not doing it out of fear of punishment. They are doing it out of love, respect, and belief in a shared vision. In a workplace, a manager who only raises their voice may get temporary results. Deadlines will be met, boxes will be checked, but morale will sink and creativity will fade. Employees will do what is required, but nothing more because their hearts are not in it. Contrast that with a leader who raises hearts. This leader acknowledges effort, celebrates progress, encourages ideas, and reminds everyone of the bigger picture. In that environment, people don't just complete tasks, they bring their passion, their creativity, and their best energy. They don't just work with their hands, they work with their hearts, and the results are not only better but lasting. Even in families, this principle shows its truth. A parent who only raises their voice may get a child to obey in the moment, but it often creates fear, resentment, or distance. A parent who raises the child's heart who guides with encouragement and affirmation, instills confidence and trust. That child grows not only obedient but motivated, not only disciplined but inspired. They carry within them a belief in themselves that will last long after the parent's words fade. The same principle applies in leadership of any kind. If you raise hearts, you are building something that will outlast you. True leadership is not about the volume of the message, but the value of the message. A raised voice can be ignored once the echo fades, but a raised heart carries the message forward. When you raise a heart, you give someone strength they didn't know they had, courage they didn't think they could find, and hope they didn't believe was possible. That is why people follow true leaders willingly. They feel stronger, braver, more capable in their presence. There is also a deeper wisdom here. Leaders who raise their voices may gain attention, but leaders who raise hearts gain influence. Attention is temporary. It drifts quickly to the next loudest sound. Influence is lasting because it is rooted in connection. People influenced by a leader carry that leader's words and example with them wherever they go. They pass it on to others. They live it out in their own actions. In this way, a leader who raises hearts creates ripples that spread far beyond their own reach. Consider history's greatest movements. They were not driven by leaders shouting commands into crowds, but by leaders who touched hearts with vision, with belief, with hope. People marched, people sacrificed, people endured because their hearts had been awakened to something greater than themselves. That is the unmatched power of raising hearts. It unlocks endurance, it unlocks sacrifice, it unlocks courage in ordinary people to do extraordinary things. In everyday life, even the smallest act of raising a heart can make a difference. A kind word in a moment of doubt, a gesture of belief when someone feels invisible, a reminder of potential when someone feels stuck. These moments are quiet, but they are powerful. They can turn despair into determination, fear into courage, hesitation into bold action. Leaders who understand this invest in raising hearts daily, knowing that every small spark they light has the potential to grow into a fire that changes everything. A raised voice demands compliance, but a raised heart inspires choice. A raised voice may force people to act, but a raised heart makes people want to act. A raised voice relies on authority, but a raised heart relies on authenticity. That authenticity is what people crave in leadership. They want to feel that the person leading them not only knows the way, but cares about them as they walk the way together. They want to feel not just instructed, but inspired, not just told, but believed in. When a leader raises hearts, they plant seeds of confidence and vision in others. Those seeds grow long after the leader has moved on. People begin to see themselves differently. They begin to lead themselves differently. And they begin to raise the hearts of others in turn. This creates a cycle of influence that no loud command could ever achieve. It creates a legacy that goes beyond tasks completed and goals achieved, reaching into lives transformed and futures shaped. Be strong but not harsh, kind but not weak, bold but not arrogant, humble but not timid. Strength without harshness is the kind of strength people admire. It is steady, reliable, and firm, but it never crushes others. Harshness takes away the beauty of strength. It turns authority into intimidation and confidence into control. True strength is the ability to stand firm without pushing others down, to hold your ground without humiliating those who disagree, to correct without breaking the spirit of the one you correct. The strongest leaders are those who can say no with clarity, but without cruelty, those who can discipline with fairness, but without humiliation, those who can face conflict with composure rather than anger. When strength is exercised without harshness, it commands respect instead of fear, and respect endures long after fear fades. Kindness without weakness is the second balance. Many confuse kindness with softness, as if being kind means saying yes to everything or allowing others to walk all over you. That is not kindness, that is avoidance. Real kindness has a backbone. It says, I care enough about you to tell you the truth. I respect you enough to set boundaries. I value you enough to challenge you to grow. Weakness avoids hard conversations. Kindness embraces them with compassion. Weakness lets people stay small. Kindness believes in them enough to push them higher. Weakness says, do whatever you want. Kindness says, I want the best for you, even if it means saying no. That balance is what gives kindness its power. People know they are loved, but they also know they are guided. Boldness without arrogance is equally critical. Boldness is courage, vision, the willingness to step forward when others hesitate. It is the spark that ignites change, the voice that speaks truth, the hand that points toward a better way. But when boldness crosses into arrogance, it loses its beauty. Arrogance is boldness turned inward. It seeks to glorify self rather than serve others. A bold leader without arrogance says, Let's go together. An arrogant leader says, watch me go alone. Boldness without arrogance lifts people. Arrogance without humility pushes them down. People can sense the difference immediately. They will follow a bold leader who inspires them, but they will resist an arrogant one who only seeks their applause. Boldness that remains humble is boldness that continues to grow because it invites others to contribute, it welcomes new ideas, it celebrates progress collectively. Humility without timidity is the last balance. Humility is not hiding in the shadows or pretending you have no worth. It is knowing your strengths but refusing to use them as weapons. It is being confident without needing to boast. It is admitting mistakes without shame, learning from others without jealousy, and leading without ego. Timidity, however, is fear dressed as humility. It avoids responsibility, avoids risks, avoids taking a stand. Where humility empowers others, timidity paralyzes. Where humility says, I don't know everything, but I'm willing to learn, timidity says, I won't try because I might fail. Humility steps forward with grace. Timidity shrinks back with excuses. That is why the difference matters. Humility makes leadership approachable and strong at the same time, while timidity makes it hesitant and weak. These four balances form the foundation of leadership that lasts. A leader who is strong but harsh drives people away. A leader who is kind but weak fails to guide. A leader who is bold but arrogant loses trust. A leader who is humble but timid fails to act. The harmony comes when strength is tempered by compassion, when kindness is reinforced by courage, when boldness is softened by humility, and when humility is strengthened by confidence. When these balances come together, leadership becomes magnetic. People feel safe, but also challenged. They feel cared for, but also guided. They feel inspired, but also respected. Imagine a workplace led by someone who is harsh in their strength. Employees may get the job done, but they do so under stress and resentment. Creativity dies, morale sinks, and turnover rises. Now imagine the same workplace with a leader who is strong but never harsh. They enforce standards, but they do it with fairness. They correct mistakes, but they do it with dignity. People still meet deadlines, but now they do it with pride rather than fear. The quality of work rises because the quality of leadership rises. Consider kindness in the same way. A leader who is weak in the name of kindness avoids tough conversations, lets standards slip, and tolerates mediocrity. The team may like the leader personally, but they lose respect professionally. Yet a leader who is kind without weakness listens with empathy, provides encouragement, but also holds people accountable. This kind of kindness earns both affection and respect. It creates an environment where people feel supported, but also stretched, cared for, but also challenged to grow. Boldness, too, has its extremes. A bold but arrogant leader makes everything about themselves. They ignore feedback, dismiss others, and crave recognition. That arrogance creates distance between leader and team. On the other hand, boldness without arrogance inspires. It says, this is where we can go, and I believe we can do it together. That kind of vision creates excitement. It energizes people. It gives them a reason to rise each morning with purpose. Boldness without arrogance builds teams that are resilient, motivated, and united. Humility may be the most misunderstood of all. Some believe humility means hiding talents, downplaying achievements, or letting others always take the lead. That is not humility. That is timidity. True humility is strength under control. It is the ability to celebrate success without boasting, to acknowledge weaknesses without shame, to value others without devaluing yourself. A humble leader walks confidently but with grace, never needing to remind people of their position because their character speaks for itself. Such humility draws people close because it makes leadership human, relatable, and trustworthy. These balances apply not just in leadership, but in every area of life. In families, strength without harshness builds discipline without fear. Kindness without weakness builds love with boundaries. Boldness without arrogance builds vision without ego. Humility without timidity builds trust without hesitation. In friendships, these qualities deepen bonds. In communities, they build unity. In nations, they shape legacies. Every relationship flourishes when strength, kindness, boldness, and humility are held in balance. The beauty of this principle is that it creates leaders people actually want to follow. Anyone can demand loyalty, but not everyone can inspire it. Anyone can issue commands, but not everyone can win trust. True influence does not come from position or title. It comes from balance. Balance that reassures people they are safe, valued, and guided. Balance that shows leadership is not about dominance, but about service. Balance that proves leadership is not about perfection, but about integrity.